April 16th, 1963. My dear fellow clergymen, while confined here in the Birmingham City Jail, I came across your recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. Seldom do I pause to answer criticism of my work and ideas. If I sought to answer all the criticisms that cross my desk, my secretaries would have little time for anything other than such correspondence in the course of the day, and I would have no time for constructive work. I think I should indicate why I'm here in Birmingham, since you've been influenced by the view which argues against outsiders coming in. I am cognizant of the interrelatedness of all communities and states. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. We are caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives in the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. You may well ask, why direct action? Why sit-ins, marches, and so forth? Isn't negotiation a better path? You are quite right in calling for negotiation. Indeed, this is the very purpose of direct action. Nonviolent direct action seeks to create such a crisis and foster such a tension that a community which has constantly refused to negotiate is forced to confront the issue. There is a type of constructive, nonviolent tension which is necessary for growth. We must see the need for nonviolent gadflies to create the kind of tension in society that will help men rise from the dark depths of prejudice and racism to the majestic heights of understanding and brotherhood. I have no despair about the future. I have no fear about the outcome of our struggle in Birmingham, even if our motives are at present misunderstood. We will reach the goal of freedom in Birmingham and all over the nation, because the goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up with America's destiny. Before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before the pen of Jefferson etched the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence across the pages of history, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored in this country without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters while suffering gross injustice and shameful humiliation. And yet, out of a bottomless vitality, they continued to thrive and develop. If the inexpressible cruelties of slavery could not stop us, the opposition we now face will surely fail. We will win our freedom because the sacred heritage of our nation and the eternal will of God are embodied in our echoing demands.
I say to you today, so even though we face the difficulties of today and tomorrow, I still have a dream. It is a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even in the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but the content of their character. I have a dream today I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted, every hill and mountain shall be made low. The rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. I have a dream. This is our hope. This is the faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out the mountain of despair, a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with a new meaning, "My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside let freedom ring." And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. So let freedom ring from the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire. Let freedom ring from the mighty mountains of New York. Let freedom ring from the heightening Alleghenies of Pennsylvania. Let freedom ring from the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado. Let freedom ring from the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that. Let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring. And when this happens, when we allow freedom to ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, "Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last."
Do you know how Martin Luther King Jr. became Martin Luther King Jr.? He went to a meeting. He went to a meeting and he listened to what was being said. He went to a meeting and he listened to what was being said, and someone asked him if he was willing to help. And what did he say? He said yes. Right, he put his hand up. He said yes. And he was not just willing to help, but he was willing to be a leader of this group. This was a new group, and they needed someone to serve as president of the organization. Dr. King liked what he heard at the meeting, and then, although he didn't go to the meeting intending for this to happen, he became president of the organization. That meeting was the organizational meeting of the Montgomery Improvement Association, a group of African American religious leaders who were organizing to support integration in Montgomery, Alabama. This particular meeting was held a week after Rosa Parks was kicked off a bus and arrested for not giving up her seat to a white man. And the Montgomery Improvement Association was one of the organizations that helped to organize and coordinate the Montgomery bus boycott, one of the first nonviolent actions against segregation in the South in the 1950s. He went to a meeting and he listened, and when asked, he said yes. Now, this is a little bit of a simplification of Dr. King's story because, in a sense, he had been preparing for this moment most of his life. He was from a long line of Baptist preachers, and he went to Crozier Seminary just down the road here in Chester. I don't know if you knew that, but he attended seminary here in Chester. And he had studied the nonviolent tactics of Mahatma Gandhi. I think some of you kids heard about Gandhi last week, right? Did you hear about Gandhi in your chapel? Yeah. And when he went to that meeting, he was prepared. He actually had a speech prepared for that meeting. But the basic storyline is that he went to this meeting and he said yes when he was asked to lead. And as we all know, he changed the world. Do you ever wish that you could change the world? Do you? I know I do. I wish that I could change the world. I want to make a difference. And I think there's something inherently within us as human beings, a human impulse, a feeling that we're born with, to want to leave a lasting impression on our world. Whether it's as a great speaker and a leader of people, the way Dr. King was, or as an artist or a musician or a teacher. There's something within us that wants to come out to show that our lives matter. We want them to matter not just to us, but to those who come after us. And I used to think that I could change the world in a big way. I did. I used to be frustrated that it wasn't happening. For some reason, I don't know what it was, but I thought that I was born to do something great, something lasting in this world. Maybe not on the scale of Dr. King, but something that was life-changing. And I have to admit, I think ego played a big part in that. I wanted others to see me in a certain way as someone great. But I don't think there's anything wrong with this yearning towards greatness, this wanting to change the world. But at the same time, I think we have to realize that it's not always going to happen, that Dr. Kings don't come along very often. Most of us, I think, never get the chance to change the world. And there's a reason that we celebrate the life of Dr. King, Gandhi, Mother Teresa, and others like them. It's because they're so rare. They come along once in a lifetime, if that. And the reality of our own lives is that they're usually lived on a much smaller stage. Not many of us will make it to Broadway or the White House. Our sphere of influence doesn't usually reach that far. We're more like the Nettos and Andys, the two youth in a high school in Idaho that you heard from today. That dialogue, that story was taken from a book called It's Our World Too. It's a true story. And those two students did what you heard today. The changes that most of us can make are going to affect only a few people. They'll make a small difference, maybe, in the world. But those changes are no less important to the people who are affected by them. Think about what Netto and Andy did for the Hispanic children of that high school in that town. Before they stood up and said this behavior was wrong, the message that these kids were hearing was that they were less than, that they were second-class citizens, that they weren't worth anything. But then Netto and Andy used what little power they had and they changed things in their school. So the children that came after them could be treated fairly, could see themselves as equals. Netto and Andy changed a few lives. They didn't change the world, but they changed their world. I guess there's a certain danger in celebrating Dr. King the way we do. It can lead us to believe that unless we can be great like him, our lives won't matter, and the differences we make won't matter. But that's a lie. That's a lie. This isn't a competition. We aren't expected to be Kings or Gandhis or Mother Teresas. We can be inspired by them for sure, but we don't need to be them or even to be like them. All we need to do is to do what we can. to do small things with great love, as we're told. You heard today in his famous I Have a Dream speech, Dr. King say that what we are to do is to hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. To hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope. That's what we are called to do. That's what we're asked to do. That's what's asked of us. So picture that with me. There's this huge mountain in front of us. It seems absolutely impossible to climb. We don't have the talent or the energy to even think of climbing it. We feel overwhelmed facing it, confronting it. And that mountain might represent racism, or gun violence, or poverty or hunger. What Dr. King is telling us when he says that we are to hew out of a mountain of despair a stone of hope is that we don't necessarily have to climb that mountain, at least not all the way to the top. Our job isn't to lead the expedition that climbs to the top of the mountain. We just have to get out a pick or a hammer, or maybe just our bare hands. And all we have to do is to chip or dig out of that mountain a stone of hope. The stone doesn't have to be a boulder the size of a car or a house. It can be a stone that just fits in our pocket. A stone of hope. Once we've got that chipped out of the mountain, then all we need to do is hold on. Hold on to that stone of hope. Our job is to carve out and carry that stone. And think what happens to that mountain if everyone chips away at it. It gets smaller and smaller until eventually it disappears. So what we've got to do is to chip away at that mountain and hold on to that stone of hope, to keep it with us, to polish it with the sweat of our hands and the sweat of our brow. That stone of hope is going to keep us going. And we have to show it to others, and it will help them keep going too. That's all that's being asked of us, and that's not so much, really. Not when we consider the size of these mountains. So we don't have to be kings. We don't have to be Gandhis. We can be Nettos and Andys. They carried that stone of hope for a school where everyone is treated fairly and with respect. Can we do that? Can we carry that stone of hope? Can we carry that stone of hope? That stone, all those stones of hope are what keep the dream alive. This day and every day. I wish you peace. Amen. Our closing words are taken from another speech that Dr. King delivered. It's from the speech he delivered that night, that first night at the Montgomery Improvement Association. And he said, "I want to tell you this evening that it is not enough for us to talk about love. There is another side called justice. And justice is really love in calculation. Justice is love correcting that which revolts against love."